Live from Bryant-Denny Stadium with special guests, feature stories, and a comprehensive look at Alabama's upcoming game. This is Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
Good morning, everybody, and happy game day. I'm Gary Harris. We're coming to you an hour earlier this week, obviously, because Alabama's kicking off at 11 a.m. in Fayetteville, Arkansas, so we're with you at 10 a.m. This is Crimson Tide Kickoff. As I alluded to, the Crimson Tide will wrap up the regular season today in Fayetteville against the 3-6 Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll break it down for you, as we always do, right here on CTKO. And let's go, as always, we'll begin with our Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama headlines.
Well, Alabama and Arkansas have never played each other this late in the regular season. The latest date, in fact, that Alabama has ever played a regular season game against anybody was December 10th. And that was back on the first season on record for Crimson Tide football in 1892. So this December 12th regular season game, the latest for a regular season game in Crimson Tide football history. An Alabama win would give the Tide its 5th unbeaten regular season of the Saban era. Of course, they've only finished those 5 unbeaten regular seasons one time unbeaten. That was 2009. But Alabama will have done so this year if they can get through it today with an all-SEC schedule, which is phenomenal. Playing 10 SEC games to go unbeaten during a global pandemic would be quite an accomplishment. Alabama, of course, in 2009 went 14-0. The other times, though, that they finished the regular season unbeaten, 2008, 2016, and 2018, they did not finish the season unbeaten. We've got a stacked show for you. We'll hear from both sides of the Alabama-Arkansas rivalry. Also this week, Mac Jones and Devonta Smith are the SEC's most dynamic duo. Find out how they build their special bond. And fans and former teammates pay tribute to the late coach Ray Perkins, who passed away earlier this week. All that, plus interviews with Alabama's Director of Athletics, Greg Byrne, Arkansas beat writer Bob Holt of the Arkansas Press-Democrat in our Behind the Enemy Lines segment, as well as Chris Stewart, play-by-play broadcaster for the Crimson Tide Network. Looking forward to all of it. Now, this was the scene Friday afternoon outside the Malmore Athletic Complex. We're always there to see the team off. That's Justin Aboigbe right there. They get on the buses, they travel over to the airport, and then they fly to their destination. In this case, Fayetteville, Arkansas, yesterday afternoon. Offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian. Those two big offensive linemen, Landon Dickerson and Alex Leatherwood, part of the best offensive line in the country, for my money. And I love the Alabama Letterman's jacket. That thing is just beautiful, and you don't get to see them that often. I love when the players wear their Letterman's jacket. Nick Saban and Director of Football Operations Ellis Ponder, the last two on. Saban gives a little wave, and then he sits in his seat, and the buses are off. 11 a.m. the kick, as I said, on ESPN today at Donald W. Reynolds Razorbacks Stadium. Well, last week Alabama left LSU in the dust down in Baton Rouge. Today the Tide is favored by 31 against Arkansas on the road. Head coach Nick Saban and the players have been asked what keeps you motivated and not looking ahead to the next week, particularly this week with the SEC Championship game coming up. The answer, Coach Saban says, the team is chasing personal and team goals like an unbeaten regular season. There's also a trend to follow. When the offense makes a big play, the defense challenges itself to go out and match. So that works both ways.
Yeah, 100%. We all feed off of each other. The offense always comes off the field, whenever they're scoring. Go out there, get a stop, go 3 and out, and that kind of motivates us because we see them doing their jobs, executing their play. So we try to go out there and do the same.
All right, Arkansas is 3-6. All right, I get it. You are what your record says you are. But make no mistake, this is a confident football team. They play better than their record, and they're really on a roll right now on offense. Last week, the Razorbacks put up a season high in total yards and points in a heartbreaking 50-48 loss at rival Mizzou. Arkansas has lost 3 straight, and as I said, the record doesn't look good, 3-6, but that doesn't do justice to how much progress has been made under first-year head coach Sam Pittman. Arkansas did not register a single SEC win in 2018 or 2019 under then head coach Chad Morris. But this is a different Razorbacks team, one that's confident that he can make plays and talented enough to make plays as well.
in the SEC, being that there are so many great teams, you could lose at any moment. You know, you can't take not one game off. You go in and not execute, you know, and you're giving up big plays, and now you're putting yourself in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of. So, you know, we have a lot of respect for Arkansas. They have a really great team, really great quarterback.
Very balanced offense, a good passing game, and a good running game. So, you know, it's going to be a very competitive game, and it's going to be a competition type of game for us.
Might want to keep an eye on number 18 for Arkansas today. He's from Hewitt-Trussville High School. Miles Mason. He was a teammate of Malachi Moore, the outstanding freshman defensive back for the University of Alabama. Both played for Josh Floyd's Huskies at Hewitt-Trussville. All right, this is the 31st meeting. Alabama is on a 13-game win streak. They're 13-0 under Nick Saban against the Hogs. Saban's road record at Alabama, marvelous. Arkansas's last win in the series way back in 2006 against Mike Shula in overtime. And Alabama, of course, riding that wave. 97 consecutive wins versus unranked opponents. You have to go all the way back to 2007 against Louisiana Monroe to find the last time the Tide lost to a team that wasn't ranked. Well, earlier this week, former Alabama head football coach and All-American wide receiver Ray Perkins passed away at his home here in the Tuscaloosa-Northport area. Perkins had been dealing with heart issues the last couple of years. He grew up in Petal, Mississippi, and played at Alabama, where he was an All-American wide receiver in 1966 and part of Coach Bryant's 1964 and 1965 national championship teams. He was drafted by the Baltimore Colts in the NFL, appeared in a couple of Super Bowls, winning one, and then he worked his way up the coaching ranks. He coached the New York Giants from 1979 to 1982 before leaving to take over for Coach Bryant when he retired at his alma mater. Perkins coached 4 seasons at UA, compiling a 32-15-1 record before leaving to go back to the NFL as head coach and director of player personnel for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alabama head coach Nick Saban knew Coach Perkins very well from their days in coaching, but also specifically since Coach Perkins moved back here to West Alabama and supported the program. They are really very close, and upon learning of Coach Perkins' passing, Nick Saban issued a statement which read, "Ray Perkins was a great friend and an outstanding football coach who served the University of Alabama with true class and integrity. Coach Perkins was a great leader who had a tremendous impact on the game of football at all levels. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his wife, Lisa, and his children, Tony, Mike, Rachel, and Shelby." All right, it is time to check in on the weather, and for that, we turn to the very dapper Chelsea Aaron, who is here looking at a little bit of rain right now. Chelsea, but what it's going to look like not only here in Tuscaloosa for the rest of the day, but also in Fayetteville.
Yeah, Gary, what I'd like to call really just a soggy Saturday as we have a stalled front right now. This is really bringing us a lot of rain across the state of Alabama. If you have any plans today, you're going to need that umbrella, as again, we're getting a lot of rain across the state of Alabama. Here in Fayetteville, though, if you made any plans to travel for the game, you are going to be seeing dry conditions, but cool conditions. Here's a live look from Bryant Denny. I mean, it just looks really sad out there, but don't hate the messenger, you guys. If I could control the weather, I promise it wouldn't look like this. Temperatures, though, not looking so bad. We're sitting in the lower end mid-60s across central Alabama, mainly going to be in those lower end mid-60s. Jasper, still in the upper 50s. Again, this rain will continue throughout much of the day as that stall front continues to push across the state. By around the end of game time, expect rain to be tapering off, and then by tonight, expect us to finally be dry. So again, if you are in Fayetteville, if you made plans to travel for the game, expect temperatures to be rather cold. We'll be in the upper 30s and lower 40s, and it will remain cloudy, but again, no rain in Fayetteville. However, we're still going to be seeing a lot of rain here in central Alabama, Gary.
Thank you, Chelsea. Wow, what a temperature swing from Tuscaloosa to Fayetteville. It's going to be chilly up there in Arkansas when Alabama and the Hogs get it on here in about 50 minutes or so. Well, still to come on CTKO, Alabama will not play another home game this season, but the road doesn't necessarily put this team at a disadvantage. We'll explain. And there's no magic ingredient that has formed the strong bond between Alabama's Mac Jones and Devonta Smith. The only secret is the amount of time that they've put in building that relationship. We'll have that story. And there's also no secret where Alabama basketball gets its passion from. Here, Crimson Tide head coach Nate Oates' spirited response to the idea that basketball should be postponed due to the coronavirus. Stick around. More CTKO is coming up.
You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. You know, there have been plenty of dynamic duos throughout the history of Alabama football, and this season we've got a duo that will stack up against any of them. CTKO's Julia Westerman is live in the studio with more on how the relationship that two Tide players have built is making the entire team better.
Yeah, Gary, Philadelphia may be the city of brotherly love, but with Mac Jones and Devonta Smith here at Alabama, Tuscaloosa could be giving Philly a run for its money. The connection between the quarterback and wide receiver this season has been nothing short of success, and the product of it has been 14 touchdowns. Jones and Smith were both part of the 2017 recruiting class and built their relationship from there. Neither started as a first-string player, Devonta backing up Robert Foster and Jones redshirting his freshman year. Now, both are in the Heisman conversation. As they've grown over the years, so is the chemistry that's evident on the football field. It all boils down to one thing: support, and also giving each other a chance.
It goes back to just the years of him and I being together. Obviously, you know, early on I was the third string quarterback and stuff, but he would still come out and throw with me if I ever needed someone to throw routes to. So I feel like we just have that chemistry. And he works really hard, and he's been doing that for the past 4 years at Alabama, and his highlight reel is insane. And I just love throwing him the ball because if it's one-on-one, he'll make the play, and he just has a lot of faith in me. So I appreciate him for that.
Every time that it's a 50-50 ball, he throw it to me and I come down with it. I always tell him I appreciate you just for trusting in me.
Bryant-Denny may have seen the last of Jones to Smitty touchdowns, but the duo has one more regular season game and the SEC championship to look forward to together. Live for CTKO, I'm Julia Westerman.
Thank you, Julia. You're right. This week at Arkansas and next week in Atlanta for the SEC championship, and then hopefully the college football playoff. But one thing is for sure, Alabama will not play another game at Bryant-Denny Stadium this season due to COVID-19, all of the things that go into travel. It makes it a little bit risky. Planes, trains, and automobiles, we know about that. But Crimson Tide players don't appear to have any concerns outside of football. Quarterback Mac Jones puts it this way: Alabama athletics and the staff do their job and the players do theirs, and there's full confidence in both.
Not really that stressful. I mean, when we travel, like, I just go down and sit on my seat in the plane and then get off the plane and go to our hotel room and eat the meals or whatever, wear your mask. I mean, we don't really interact, which kind of sucks with, like, the fans who would come and watch us because, you know, usually we sign autographs or just hang out with the fans for a little bit, which that kind of sucks this year not being able to do that. But at the end of the day, you just got to protect your own bubble.
Yes, you do. Coming up on CTKO, we'll go behind enemy lines with the famed writer Bob Holt of the Arkansas Press-Democrat. And Alabama basketball prepares for a non-conference showdown. A big test. Don't be surprised if this game winds up factoring into a March Madness discussion. Stick around. More CTKO is on the way.
Towards the end of practice, one of the little managers came up and said, Coach Saban wants y'all to come over at the meeting. At the end of practice, he brings the team together and goes through different things. Well, he said he wants y'all in that meeting. And I didn't have an idea what it was about, so I got over there. Then he turned and he said, was talking about 90th birthday. Happy birthday to you. I had a jersey with my name on the back of it with number 90 on it. They had a big cake. Look at that! And he was very impressive to me, of course, and unexpected. But I remember I told him, I said, well, Coach, you've kind of got me in a problem here. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you got the press here, and the word's getting out that I'm 90 years old. I said, I told a girl at this bar the other night I was 21. I remember he said, if she believed that, don't have anything to do with her.
Well, he is a special, special person. We love bringing you Conyers Corner here on CTKO. And welcome back into Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. It's time for our segment I love, Behind Enemy Lines, where we preview the Crimson Tide's weekly matchup with someone from the other side, in this case from the Arkansas Razorbacks perspective. CTKO's William Galloway is in the studio, and he talked with Bob Holt, a legendary writer for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. William joins us now with more.
Good morning, Gary. Beginning this season, many believed Arkansas was just out for the count. They had one of the most difficult schedules, and people think they weren't even going to win a game. They entered the season with a 19-game losing streak in conference play, and the outlook for them wasn't pretty.
Then when an all-SEC schedule came out, you thought, wow, that's going to be tough. And then when they added Georgia and Florida, and it's like, wow, what does the SEC have against Arkansas? They couldn't have given them Vanderbilt or South Carolina or somebody, maybe one of those teams. They gave them both of them. So when that schedule came out, you thought they may not win a game. They could be improved and not win a game because I don't think they've been favored in any game.
The Razorbacks enter Game 10 with a 3-6 record, but Coach Saban says that can be deceiving.
You know, it's always a challenge. You know, Arkansas to me has, you know, a really, really good team that their record really doesn't reflect how well they've played. They lost 3 games this year by a total of 7 points, or they'd be 6-3 instead of 3-6.
Last week, quarterback Felipe Franks was held out versus Missouri due to rib injury. He was replaced by KJ Jefferson. But Holt says this week it may not matter who's under center.
I really don't think it would matter if, you know, Peyton Manning in his prime was quarterback in Arkansas. I don't think they could probably beat, and I'd say that for a lot of teams, not just Arkansas. I mean, Alabama's just rolling over everybody pretty much. And but yeah, I would expect Arkansas to put up a fight. Don't expect them to win. Don't expect them to be close. You know, their pass defense was really exposed at Missouri last week. And when you consider what Alabama can do in the passing game, I mean, I expect Alabama to roll big.
Defensively for Arkansas, they have 3 of the top 4 tacklers in the SEC. Grant Morgan leads all of college football with 111 total tackles. Jalen Catalon is tied for 3rd in the SEC with 89, and Bumper Pool is 4th in the league with 88. Morgan left the Missouri game with an apparent knee injury. His status is unknown. However, Holt says the guy to keep an eye on is Catalon.
He's a big-time hitter, really good player. Might be their best defensive player, honestly. And then Bumper Pool, been a very consistent player for him. He's going into his 2nd year as a full-time starter, starts some as a freshman. Yeah, he's a good playmaker, too. So, yeah, those 3 guys have been mainstays for him, but we don't know about Morgan's stats. That would obviously be a big loss if he hadn't been able to play.
Like most teams preparing for the Crimson Tide, Holt says Arkansas's biggest concern needs to be Alabama's offense.
You know, you used to think of Alabama's great defense and great running game and play action passes, and obviously, you know, Nick Saban has evolved, you know, in his offensive philosophy, and they just have so much firepower that would be the #1 concern for me if I was playing Alabama.
And of course, this will be the 31st overall meeting between Alabama and Arkansas. Alabama has an 8-4 record in Fayetteville, and of course, 11 a.m. kickoff on ESPN. Reporting live for CTKO, I'm William Galloway.
Thank you, William. Just love behind enemy lines. All right, update on the Arkansas quarterback situation coming a little bit later and on the show. All right, we're talking basketball. Alabama held a press conference that made national headlines on Thursday on a Zoom call with the media. Tide head coach Nate Oates asked about comments made by Duke's legendary coach Mike Krzyzewski. Coach K said playing during a pandemic doesn't feel right. Well, Coach Oates doesn't agree with that line of thinking.
It's a good question. Christina, can I ask you something? I just want to know your opinion. Do you think if Coach K hadn't lost the 2 non-conference games at home, if he'd still be saying that?
Probably not.
Okay. I just wanted you to say it, not me. So, look, here's my deal on it. I think we'd have a whole lot more problems if we weren't playing games.
All right. I tell you what, I like Coach Oates' spunk and willingness to give his opinion. You ask him a question, you'll get an answer. Well, Alabama basketball will play in Atlanta against Clemson this evening at 7 p.m. It's part of the Holiday Hoopsgiving event. Clemson Tigers are undefeated already with wins over Mississippi State and Purdue. And from the look of it, Saturday's game will be the type of quality opponent that, if Alabama could win it, could be a big hit toward getting into the NCAA tournament in March. And the Alabama women's basketball team travels to Georgia for a game against Mercer on Sunday. Tip-off with the Mercer Bears is tomorrow at 1 o'clock. It's the team's first game since last Saturday when they beat Oklahoma State in part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge out in Stillwater. Alabama was supposed to host Sam Houston State this past Wednesday, but Sam Houston dealing with COVID-19 issues and was not able to travel. The women will travel to Georgia, as I said, to play Mercer tomorrow. Well, still to come on CTKO, former Crimson Tide players pay their respects and share their memories of former head coach Ray Perkins. And find out why Coach Perkins' legacy is ensured to carry on and give generations of young Tide fans something to learn, enjoy, and appreciate. Stick around. Well, Ray Perkins, who replaced his former college coach Paul Bryant as Alabama's coach in 1983, and he also started the transition with the New York Giants that led to 2 Super Bowl titles, died Wednesday. As we mentioned earlier, he passed away 3 days after his 79th birthday. Perkins left a head coaching job with the Giants to replace Coach Bryant following the 82 season. It was a dream job for the former Crimson Tide star. Perkins won 3 bowl games at Alabama and was 32-15-1, but he also had a losing record in 1984. It was the program's first losing season since the year before the school hired Bryant. Bryant came in 58. Last losing season had been 57. He also served as the athletics director during that period, built a lot of facilities. Perkins left Alabama following the 86 season to return to the NFL as head coach and player personnel director of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was an All-American receiver in 1966, and Perkins played professionally with Johnny Unitas and Baltimore Colts from 1967 to 1971. He was a very good receiver as well. And right now, Dylan Morgan of CTKO is going to join us with more on the legacy of Ray Perkins.
And Gary, numbers don't always tell the whole story. Ray Perkins, the former player, coach, and athletic director, won 2 national championships as a player under Bear Bryant before a short career in the NFL transitioned into coaching until 1983, when he would return to his alma mater to take over for his former head coach. And although Perkins couldn't bring home another national championship, his story goes far beyond the stats.
Well, Coach Perkins was a great offensive football mind. I mean, he was one of the ones that, the things we see on the field today, he was one of the innovators coming up with that when he worked in the NFL as assistant coach and a head coach. So beyond his playing time here, his time as coach here, he was one of the true offensive minds in football.
In addition to his innovation, Perkins was known for going away from traditions set in place by his predecessor. These included tearing down the tower on the practice field, firing popular assistant coaches, and moving away from the wishbone offense. Yet, even with these actions, Perkins was extremely popular amongst his players.
He was a warm person, and when we got here, I think the quarterbacks probably got to know him a little bit better than some of the other guys on the team because we spent, endless hours with him in film rooms and in meeting rooms. So he was always just a great person to me, and like I said, that's one of the main reasons I made the decision I did. You know, I felt like he could help mold me as a person as I was here for 4 years or 5 years, however long it ended up being.
Coach Ray Perkins will be forever remembered by the University of Alabama and football for his love and dedication on and off the field. Reporting for CTKO, I'm Dylan Morgan.
Thank you, Dylan. Outstanding report. Well, part of the way former players are paying tribute to Coach Perkins is sharing some stories. And we heard, some of them right there, but we spoke, as you saw, with a couple of former Crimson Tide players. Offensive lineman Mike White signed with Coach Bryant in 1980. When Coach Perkins arrived in 1983, he was a 2-year starter at guard and center, one of the leaders on the team in 83 and 84. Gene Newberry was a highly recruited quarterback out of Blytheville, Arkansas, that spurned home state Arkansas and Tennessee, where both his parents had gone to school, and signed with Alabama for one reason: Ray Perkins. Let's hear from these guys.
I just felt like he was a very warm person, and maybe it didn't come out when you watch him on his news interviews or even see him on the sideline, but you have to remember, as a player at Alabama, he was a fierce competitor. He was the same way as a coach. But when you kind of get him away from, the sideline in the meeting rooms, or especially when he comes to your home, even though it was a recruitment and they tell everybody they love him, I really felt like, he cared about me, and I think the other guys on the team felt the same way.
Well, I was a center, and I had to learn how to snap the ball in the shotgun, which, hey, man, that was, we just saw the Dallas Cowboys do that. That was kind of new. Walter Lewis was our quarterback that first year, and he was a fantastic passer and just fantastic, still one of the best athletes I've ever seen. But he had the ability to throw the ball, and certainly Coach Perkins took advantage of that. Still kind of funny when you think about it. we probably still only threw the ball like maybe 15 times a game. And nowadays, they throw it, 40. So things are a lot different. But at the time, it was very innovative.
Well, two of the moments that stand out during Perkins' tenure as the head coach, Van Tiffin's game-winning 52-yard field goal in the 1985 Iron Bowl, and quarterback Mike Shula's game-winning come-from-behind drive to beat Georgia also in 1985. Those moments immortalized by famed sports artist Daniel Moore. The kick, Van Tiffin to win the 85 Iron Bowl, and the comeback, quarterback Mike Shula during his game-winning drive against Georgia in the 1985 season opener at Sanford Stadium in Athens. Well, still to come on CTKO, this week's Byrne Point with Alabama's Director of Athletics, Greg Byrne. And this year's Alabama squad has become one of the best offenses in college football. But fans will always find a reason to nitpick. What is their concern, and is it legitimate? We'll take a look next. Welcome into this week's Byrne Point, along with University of Alabama Director of Athletics Greg Byrne. I'm Gary Harris. Greg, let's talk about the Crimson Core Fund and the donor support. We've seen the incredible renovations at Bryant-Denny Stadium and all over this campus in regards to the athletic facilities, and I know that can't happen without great support from donors, friends of the university, and alumni.
Yeah, one of the things that separates our university to so many others is just the long-standing support of people at every level. Obviously, top donors and people who, love the University of Alabama and come together maybe to one game in their lifetime, but it means so much to them, and we can't take any of that for granted. But during these unprecedented times, we've asked our donors who have and season ticket holders who maybe aren't going to get their full allotment of season tickets for the year, if they'd consider keeping some or all of their money in for this year to help us try to survive. It's something that we know is so important to our state, so important to our community, and the reach of the University of Alabama. Just yesterday, in fact, Gary, I was talking to a person I know in the state of Kentucky. His daughter's looks like it's going to get into Harvard, and she wants to come to Alabama. And so our stage that we have as an athletic department is something that really helps our university and our community, and I think people recognize that. And so what we said is we started the Crimson Core Fund. I said, if you'll donate your dollars, there's tax deductions for you that you can work out with your tax preparer. But it's something that was going to go to the well-being of the student athlete, academic support, mental health, nutrition, strength and conditioning. Go to those areas to support the programs, career development, our life skills program, to make sure that during this time we can continue to support the core principles of our department in supporting our student athletes. And it's amazing what percentage of our season ticket base did at least something to try to help our student athletes, our 650 student athletes from our 21 sports. And again, it's just showing the strength of the University of Alabama and the passion people have. And we can't thank everybody enough for participating.
Yeah, that's great. And I know because this directly impacts the athletes, how appreciative they are and how appreciative you and the folks at the athletic department are. You organized the Crimson Tide Foundation Thank-a-thon phone drive, where over 200 student athletes from all sports made calls to thank those that have contributed. That had to be special for the athletes, and it had to be special for the donors as well.
Oh, yeah. Heard great feedback from a lot of donors who reached out to me after they were called by different student athletes from some of our sports, and appreciate the participation. One of them called me and said, Najee Harris just called me to say thanks. And it's a great learning experience for the young men and the young women, too, to learn how to pick up. And it's an old-fashioned phone. It's got a cord and everything. And they call and they we give them a script of what to say, but they learn how to have that interaction with people that are maybe older than them for the most part, because, most of our donors are obviously out of college, and to have the ability to say thank you and to understand what we invest in our student athletes and their experiences academically, athletically, socially, and it doesn't happen by itself. And so anyways, I just was really great job by the Crimson Tide Foundation staff, Lindsay over there who put this together. And at the same time, too, just really great job by our student athletes to take the time to say thank you and how much we appreciate each and every supporter of our program.
Yeah, and I think that's just a great thing that these athletes did, these student athletes at Alabama, to call these donors. Finally, before we wrap it up, you've already kind of hit on it, but I know that there are television contracts and there's different ways of getting revenue, but clearly without the donors to the athletic department, none of this would be possible. They really are the lifeblood of the athletics department, correct?
Oh, they are. College athletics is it's a unique model. You wouldn't start a business or anything like this with the college athletics model. There's obviously revenue. It's such an important part to keep this thing going. But at the same time, too, the opportunities that our donors present to our student athletes to give many times the first person in their family to go to college, maybe multi-generation families. We have young men and young women walk out with master's degrees during their 4 or 5 years here because of the academic support and hard work that they put into making that happen. That doesn't happen without the support of our donors. It doesn't give us the opportunity to go compete for national championships and across the board in our sports. And that's what we want to do. You can see the picture behind me. We have 21 sports. We have 650 student athletes. Whatever we compete in, we want to be great. And we're not going to apologize for that. But it takes resources to do that. And our donors allow us to have that opportunity. And I personally, and we as the department, can't thank them enough.
Outstanding. All right, that's going to do it for this week's Byrne Point. For Greg Byrne, I'm Gary Harris. Crimson Tide Kickoff will return right after this. And welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. It's been fun to watch this 2020 Alabama offense, to say the least, averaging nearly 50 points a game. In fact, they had 650 yards of offense last week at LSU. William Galloway rejoins us now with a report on the Crimson Tide offense and the scoring patterns he's seen throughout the season. William?
Hello again, Gary. This year has been so much fun to watch and featured one of the best Alabama offenses in the history of the program. But when you step back and take a look at the big picture of when and how Alabama has scored, something stands out. The Crimson Tide average nearly 49.5 points per game and have a season total of 443 points through those 9 contests. 57% or 253 of those points have come in the first half, and in the last 4 games when Alabama has totaled 201 points scored, 60% or 121 of those points have come in the first half. While this is not an outrageous number or percentage, it is worth noting, and even Coach Saban and Mac Jones acknowledged that they need to come out of the break stronger and play better offensively in the second half.
I think the emphasis is always there is no scoreboard. You want to come out and play and reestablish the tempo of the game in the second half. I think there's been times when we've done this fairly well, and there's been times when, we've had a couple slow starts. So, it's always something that you're trying to focus on and work with, with the team. That's really, really important to make good halftime adjustments and get the players to come out to reestablish the tempo in the second half. And, we've kind of been up and down in that regard, but something that we certainly want to continue to focus on.
I've been trying to find ways to just raise our energy coming out at halftime. I think part of that is just getting warmed up a little bit more, and we'll have to find a way to do that and just get our heart rate up so we're ready to kind of go in the second half. But at the end of the day, you got to just go out there and treat it like play by play. It doesn't matter if it's in the first play of the game or in the first half or the second half, but we definitely have to address that, and I'm sure our coaches will come up with ways to help fix that.
And with it being an 11 a.m. kickoff, it's imperative that the players start both halves on the right note. Reporting live for CTKO, I'm William Galloway.
Thank you, William. The voice of the Crimson Tide, Eli Gold, has tested positive for COVID-19. He made the announcement Thursday evening on the Nick Saban radio show. Eli hosted the show from his home. He said he and his wife, Claudette, both tested positive for COVID. He also said he has received a plasma treatment, similar to the one Coach Saban received after his positive test. Eli will not be at the game today, snapping his streak of 409 consecutive Alabama football games called on the radio. With Eli's absence, Chris Stewart will pull double duty today. Stewart will step in for Eli on play-by-play for the football game in the morning, and then we'll call the basketball game tomorrow evening against Clemson, or this evening against Clemson, I should say. Stewart, along with producer-engineer Tom Stipe, Roger Hoover, football color analyst John Parker Wilson, and basketball color analyst Brian Passing will do the two broadcasts from the Bryant-Denny Stadium press box. Eli is on the pregame show this morning from his home in Birmingham. Coming up next, CTKO's Mike Royer speaks with Chris Stewart. He'll tell us more about the challenge of working Crimson Tide games remotely. And Senator Landon Dickerson has become a central figure on social media. Find out the story behind his viral video flop against LSU that rivals the acting of some of the NBA's biggest stars.
Welcome back into CTKO, everybody. I'm Mike Royer, and our special guest today is Chris Stewart, well known, of course, around the University of Alabama, both during football broadcasts, but he's the play-by-play announcer, of course, for Alabama basketball. Chris, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Mike, always great to talk to you, buddy.
Being an Indiana boy, you are broadcasting my favorite sport. I know we're in football country, but I just think college basketball is the best. I get from you, and I don't think I've asked you this in person, when I hear you do a broadcast, you tend to make me think college basketball is your favorite sport too.
Honestly, and I get asked this a lot because I'm fortunate enough to be a part of all three broadcasts, football, basketball, and baseball. I'm not sure that I've got one, Mike. And that's not trying to straddle the fence. I just enjoy it. They're so different in each broadcast, or each sport, I should say, from a broadcasting standpoint, brings such unique challenges, and they're all different. That it's difficult for me to pick one. Basketball is what I've done the most of, although I guess maybe now after 20 plus years of baseball, maybe it is more baseball games, but it's what I had done the most of by the time I got to Alabama. I'll put it that way. I love it. I did play it in high school, albeit at slow motion. It's something that I do really, really enjoy, though, tremendously, and have been so fortunate to have a chance to do this for quite a while at Alabama. And it's very unique. I love the pace, especially now the pace that we're playing at with Nate Oates as the head coach, and the excitement that is surrounding basketball right now. It's making it a lot of fun. But just in general, if I was told I could only do one, that might be the one. Okay. I don't know. Sure, it would be a tough call, but I do thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to broadcast those games.
I suppose basketball is my favorite because I tend to know a little bit more about that game. I can spot good players, but I can spot good coaching and good plays and that sort of thing. What an exciting time for Alabama basketball with Coach Oates, the recruiting he's done. Without pandemic, and we can apply that to everything these days, without that, this would already be one of the most exciting seasons just because the way they're playing. It seems to me the only thing missing now is experience and chemistry of playing together for a long time. Is that your view so far?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I think we saw them grow tremendously in the tournament in Asheville last week, and I think you'll see that pay off in their game this coming weekend against Clemson. I think you'll see the benefit of what they gained from finally getting to play away from home and to play together and to be together and to have more time from a team bonding, team building standpoint, but also from a basketball perspective of understanding each other better in roles and chemistry, and that is just going to get better. They took a beating that they were embarrassed by in the first game against Stanford, but I thought it was tremendous the way they bounced back. Didn't play great the next game against UNLV, but in that final matchup against Providence, they looked really, really good, and I think you're starting to see that come together and start to gel. And the pace in which they play is fun, but understanding that you talked about the recruiting class and the new look to it. And you're right. If this were a normal season, normal circumstances, I think we would have fans hanging from the rafters at Coleman Coliseum. And it would be a very, very tough ticket. But this is a lot of fun to watch because the recruiting class fit the need so perfectly.
What about the challenges of broadcasting with the restrictions, the pandemic now? There are times when you're broadcasting a basketball game hundreds of miles away and you're in a football stadium. Who would have ever predicted you'd have to figure out a way to do that?
Well, I'll give you the most recent game as a prime example. We did it from Baumhauer's in Tuscaloosa, and the purpose of doing that was to give us a little bit of atmosphere. Mm-hmm. You had Bama fans there, and you could have their reaction to exactly what we were seeing when things went well and then when things didn't go well. So you at least had a crowd. It was very different, but it was a crowd, and it was some atmosphere for our listening audience. And frankly, for us as a broadcast crew, it gives you more juice and more energy when you feel like you're watching it with a home crowd as well. And that's what we had being around Alabama people, even though you're watching a game take place in a virtually empty gymnasium in Asheville, North Carolina. But, the challenge that comes with that, you're not able to see the entire floor. You're at the mercy of the cameras. You're at the mercy of the producer.
Sure.
Because you're seeing what the home viewer is watching. And normally when I'm doing a game, I'm able to see away from the ball. Mm-hmm. Brian Passick, my color analyst, is able to see away from the ball, and that's where he gets so much of his intel and his insight to share with our audience, is seeing what transpires away from the ball itself. We can't see everything when we want to see it.
Yeah.
So we're having to just relay what we see as it's available to us, but hope that we utilize that scoreboard. And it's something I always try to do. It's something I was taught as a player.
Sure.
Whenever the whistle blows, you're looking immediately at the scoreboard so you can find out the time.
Yep.
And you always know how much time's left on the clock. Well, I have to do that for the listener anyway. I'm the eyes for them to know, and there's nothing more important when I'm doing play-by-play. There's nothing I can describe that's more important than the score and the time of what's taking place. And then from there, you go to ball position on the floor, and anything else you're able to work in is gravy at that point. Well, in this, I have to give the score in time as I see it, because the television cameras and the producer could take that graphic off the board. We don't have view of the scoreboard, the physical scoreboard within the arena itself. So thankfully, I've got stat broadcast available on my iPad, and if they take that graphic off the screen before I get a chance to glance at it, as they roll to a commercial or something in that manner, at least I've got a backup. But it's nowhere near like being in the arena itself. Our task as broadcasters is to try to make it as normal an experience for the listener as possible, make it sound as much like a regular broadcast as we can. But the truth is, we're working under some very different circumstances.
Chris, I could talk to you all day going through this pandemic, your own physical challenges you've been through in the last year and a half or so. We're so glad you look great, you sound great, and we're so happy that you're active in all three sports, and it's always a pleasure to see you.
Mike, I appreciate it. I still look better on radio than I do television, but I do feel better, and I do appreciate it tremendously. Well, thanks so much.
We'll go from my favorite basketball announcer to my favorite sports director, Gary Harris, as CTKO continues. Chris Stewart, thanks again. Have a great day.
You too, Mike.
Great stuff. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Chris. We're back on Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. Alabama's Landon Dickerson likes to have some fun, and his teammates know it. Julia Westerman now joins us in the studio with more on his joyous approach to the game of football.
Yeah, Gary, I would say he is a firm believer of the saying, life's too short to not have any fun. The redshirt senior center is coming up on his final games as a member of the Crimson Tide and has enjoyed every minute of his time in Tuscaloosa. He loves being on the football field, but even more so making the most of every game. His fun in the LSU game went viral, a flop influenced by contact from a Tiger defensive lineman. His tweet after the game poked fun at the issue again. Doing things like this is what makes playing football fun, in his opinion, and it's something he thinks has improved the experience overall.
I think the biggest thing is, this, a lot of people can see this as a business, and it is really it can be a business at times. But, you know, I really think that I enjoy just football in every aspect when it comes to playing, being around teammates, just the camaraderie, just having fun with things and enjoying it is a big part of, you know, having success as a team.
Dickerson has at least 2 more games to bring his personality to. Live for CTKO, I'm Julia Westerman.
Love that guy. We'll be back with more CTKO right after this.
Coach, what concerns you most about Alabama?
Stopping them.
Sam Pittman gets it. It's going to be a tough chore for his defense. College football award season is right around the corner. Mac Jones is up for the Davey O'Brien Award, the Maxwell Award, Devonta Smith, the Maxwell Award, and the Blitnikoff Award. Will Reichard, that's nice to see an Alabama kicker up for the Groza Award. Landon Dickerson, the Outland Trophy. Alex Leatherwood, the Outland Trophy. Najee Harris, the Maxwell Award. Patrick Surtain and Dylan Moses, the Lott Trophy. Patrick Surtain also up for the Nagurski Trophy. Bronco Nagurski, should be easy to say. And Thomas Fletcher is up for the Manley Award, which is for the best snapper in the country. And all these guys are great football players. And when you're number one and you're unbeaten, you get up for a lot of awards. All right, let's check in with Chelsea one final time on the weather.
Yeah, we've been dealing with the rain all this morning and expect it to continue on as we go throughout the rest of the afternoon and this evening. This is due to a stalled front that continues to just push rain again across much of the state. Make sure you have that umbrella out. But again, if you traveled to Fayetteville, you're seeing dry conditions up there, but cool conditions. Not here, though. Temperatures sitting right now in the lower and mid 60s. Some areas still in the upper 50s. Expect us to top out in the upper 60s and low 70s today. That rain will continue throughout much of game time. It will be pushing out later this evening, and we'll see much drier conditions and cooler conditions. But again, it's going to be cold up there in Arkansas.
Thank you, Chelsea. That's going to do it for Crimson Tide Kickoff for everyone here. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game.